Okay, so sometimes I get out my blue marker to just kind of highlight little small areas where you might want to change it to gender neutral or specify females as you make that change back to just the case of girls. Um, so while I had a section above that I skipped because it was related to that change you're going to make, um, sometimes as I move forward, I do mark it in blue just to say, okay, this is a spot where you're going to want to make it gender neutral or specify that it's girls and not boys, not male and female. Just remove, well, actually, the way I worded it with the to the highlight the extent to which that corrects that issue for you. So I was just kind of helping you there with that. Okay. Then we have some stuff here. Like this sentence, the changes I was making in this sentence, it's funny, just the little change of going from this in dash, because that's what they call that single dash, it's an in dash. That's not really an appropriate use of that punctuation mark. If you want this kind of construction for the sentence, it needs a colon. So I just kind of, since it was a little bit confusing what I wanted you to do, I just rewrote it down at the bottom, how I think that it could work if you used a colon instead of an in dash. And then I put a little green dot here because I feel like this sentence here, this green highlighted sentence, needs to be there because that's where you're talking about being a complete observer. And then here's another sentence about being a complete observer. But in between that, you talk about moving towards becoming observer's participant. So that's one of those spots where you just want to get everything together because it makes it more readable. So if you could just move that green sentence up to the green dot. Let me know if you can't see green. I know not everybody can see the color green, but hopefully it's pretty clear. You can probably see that big dot there. Um, all right, rewritten with colon. Okay, I'm going to pause and look again. This is a kind of sentence here where you might think she's just being picky, but I'm actually not being picky. The sentence has a lot of good words in it and phrases and stuff, but the reason why I changed it is because it needs to be parallel. One second. Okay, so it's not, well, actually, before I talk about parallelism, I do think this comma is bold. Pretty sure, so check that. You don't want that to be bold. So additionally, and so what you're doing in the sentence is you're listing three things, right? Observing the design of the classroom, how students are grouped for activities, and artifacts that are displayed as part of the classroom environment. Those are the three things in your list, and they need to be parallel, and they're not parallel right now. Sorry. So yeah, they're not parallel right now because this is observing is like a gerundial statement, and then how students are grouped doesn't really match. Anyway, I think I fixed it to where it is parallel. So just trust it's a little bit hard for me to explain, but I mean the sentence was almost good enough, but it just didn't have that feeling, and it'll trigger people that are sort of anal about that sort of thing. Okay, so researcher, okay. Here's another green dot here. I think you should insert some green stuff here. I think this is, yeah, that's the sentence that I think you should insert. It's sort of a connecting sentence because you need to say somewhere that you're going to collect documents. You don't actually state that you're going to collect documents. You just start talking about stuff. And I think that you need a sentence that basically says you're going to collect documents. That's what that suggestion is about. Yeah, here you use the word questionnaire, but later on when you're talking about surveys as a form of data collection, you use the word survey. So I think you should be consistent. Just it makes it easier for the reader for a super long paper like a dissertation. Okay, I'm going to pause and see if there's anything else I should talk about. Yeah, on the surveys, I think that you'll eventually want to note what appendix we can look at for further information, like perhaps your survey questions. Okay, so I've already talked about all of this stuff about potentially moving this to the timeline section and moving this to the opening of the whole section. And then that takes us down into what is currently called Table 2. You do want to check APA manual pages 125 to 137 to learn how to fix your tables. I suggest you do that before we send this to Dr. Pope and Dr. Dalba. Just every little thing we can do to make this look totally professional and ready to go. pushes it over to people thinking, yeah, this is good. We're ready. So just every little, even little visual things that don't matter, they really don't matter. I think tables look just as good like this, but we want to go with that APA. Okay, so scrolling. So I do think this is a section where there's any doubt in here, cite Brown and Clark especially. Dr. Pope likes Brown and Clark, so let's cite them for how you're doing your thematic analysis. You're definitely using their 6-step procedure, so just cite throughout, okay? Where any sentences that don't have a citation, I would just pop them in there just to be clear. Excuse me. Yeah, okay. So now we're getting into the trustworthiness section. Again, saying when in doubt, cite. You know, there's some spots where you kind of have long swaths without citing, like maybe, I'm sure Merriam talks about triangulation. You know, maybe she belongs in here. You might go double check your Merriam, but you know, pepper her throughout this section and anybody else that needs to be cited, just to be really clear. Okay, yeah, here I'm saying, you know, I think you should be using sentence case. So when you go and check your headings in the APA manual, just double check I think that's accurate. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure. So that should be a big A, and then everything else should be lowercase there. I'm almost done, Georgia. This is another case where I highlighted in blue this section where when you've changed it to where you're not having boys anymore, you'll probably change that word in the future. Okay, so that, and maybe you'll just say single there, or you'll just remove the word altogether. So that's my feedback for chapter 3. I think it's actually reading really well. It's much simpler than it has been at least a year ago when we got this paper and you were talking about phenomenology. It's much more readable, and I think it's better. So I think you're pretty much ready to share this out. Like once you've made your changes, I think it's ready to be shared with Dr. Pope and Dr. Dalba. And let's get that 2-week time limit rolling. And I will meet that 2-week time limit, and I will ask them to use the rubric and tell me, okay, what is the hang up here? What does she need? What are must-do things before we can move forward? But I think, I don't know. We have to give them their chance to look at it with fresh eyes, but I think we're about ready to really start hitting it hard. I think it's in good shape, personally. All right, so I will stop talking.